of state Baptist conventions across the nation have been in full swing since late September. In Alabama, the annual meeting will take place November 15 and 16 at Shades Mountain Baptist Church in Birmingham. I was thinking about this morning that you are less than 2 weeks away from go time. So tell us what's in your mind right now. What's going through your mind as you get ready for these last few days?
Well, my mind feels like a train station where trains are all coming in from different directions. That's one analogy I'd use. There might be some others. But seriously, the state convention meeting ought to be considered in a couple of ways. Number one, it ought to be considered a reunion because we don't get together that much as Baptists. We are a family of faith. The SBC is true the same way. We see each other at venues such as that at SBC and state convention. So, in one sense of the word, we have a family reunion, and there are all kinds of auxiliary meetings and luncheons and dinners where groups that have affinity groups that have a kind of connection that even amplifies that family reunion atmosphere. Now, from my standpoint, a family reunion because I go about as what I might call a universal guest in churches, and I'm somewhere almost all the time, but I don't often get to see a lot of Alabama Baptists together. So for me, it is a family reunion, but I have one big hindrance, and that is I feel almost sequestered on the stage and whatever because things have to move pretty quickly. We don't have a lot of time, day and a half, so we that's the second component, family reunion, and also family business.
Right.
Every year we do have matters that have to be considered. Some of them are often viewed as boilerplate matters. We do them annually, but it's very serious and very important matters. When you think about when you vote on the budget as messengers, you are empowering your funds, that is your gifts through the cooperative program, to touch the lives in Alabama, North America, and around the world. So that's no small feat. Alabama is a 50-50 state in the truest, purest sense of the word or term. We have, for a number of years now, been 50% SBC, 50% state convention, and it has helped Alabama maintain the status of being number one in giving to SBC causes. Now, I often say we're not the largest state convention. We don't have the largest number of big churches or mega churches of that sort, but we have in our people some of the most generous sacrificial givers. So that's an item of business we have to consider. There are other mundane matters we have to deal with, mundane until you have to use them, and that is audit. Every entity has to have an audit, and the State Board of Missions is not excluded from that. In fact, we're included on a 6th-level audit process, and that is something. We also set goals for Lottie Moon and Annie Armstrong, and yes, Myers Mallory, the global hunger, and the Children's Home Offering. Those things are very good measurements for Alabama Baptists in terms of how they are being able to give and make sure that they have an impact, not only here in Alabama, but yes, I say in North America and around the world. So those may be considered not so distinguishing and maybe not the most bling bling things you do, but they are very important. Also, this year, we have a convention sex abuse task force that will need to make a report. They have worked as hard as any group I've seen in my almost 25 years of service. They have taken this very seriously. As you know, they've interviewed every entity leader. They have helped entity leaders and the entity themselves be able to determine best practices in terms of policies, prevention and protection of sexual abuse. They've also asked very salient questions, very important questions to each entity leader. The State Board of Missions definitely was right at the center of that process. And I'm looking forward to their report. Now, it may come across to some a little bit lengthy. It may come across to some, well, it's a report. You're telling us what you did, but it is an accountability report. We need to understand that. It's an accountability report, And it hopefully will set the example for churches, because there is in the report some very strong suggestions for churches in regard to how they can handle the sex abuse issue and protection and prevention. In addition to all that, Jennifer, if I could elaborate further, and when you ask me a question, I often say to people, when somebody asks me a question, I start with Adam and Eve and go forward. We're delighted this year to have Robert Smith back with us. He's a favorite among Alabama Baptists, and certainly with me, I've really grown to love and appreciate him. He's a man of integrity, a man of the word, and he's also one of the most brilliant and radiant kind of preachers. He's almost indescribable in the way he's able to deliver God's message. He's always encouraging. He fits his audience. He kind of interviewed me as to what he felt, what I felt ought to have happen in accord with our theme, Celebrate, which I should have mentioned early on. And it's based on Psalm 100, of course. We're celebrating, setting off a soft launch, if you will, of our 200th anniversary. This will be our 199th meeting of an annual meeting of the state convention, and next year would be 200. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time looking back in history. Actually, we'll probably spend more time learning from history and being able to live in the present and look to the future, having learned some lessons from the past, good and bad, learning from good and bad experiences. But the Celebrate theme covers all of it, from the entity reports to the theme interpretations to almost everything we do. And I also need to mention a dear friend, Willie McLaren. I've really grown to appreciate Willie. He's the interim acting president and CEO of the Southern Baptist Executive Committee. Now, that's a challenging role, just even in the interim capacity, if you will. But Willie is a remarkable man. He has a saying that I love, and every time I hear him say it, I just almost get chill bumps. He said, "I want to be scripturally fed and spirit led." Now, you ponder that a little bit. You cannot hardly argue. If you're scripturally fed, you can be spirit led. And Willie exemplifies that. He handles issues very well. He has outstanding relational skills, and he has already endeared himself with Alabama Baptists. He's attended many of the state convention meetings already across the landscape of Southern Baptist life. So we're glad to have him. We also are blessed in having Buddy Champion as our president. Buddy is one of those affable yet strong leaders, and I think he's done a superb job in being able to represent Alabama Baptist well. He's gone beyond the call of duty to be in meetings, and I tell you, there are a lot of meetings that I told him we need to prioritize those for him, and I think he'll get better if he's able to serve a second term. But he's really been available. Now, some of it's been through Zoom, but Buddy has served us well, very well, and I'm proud of him. Joel Carwile is one of the better preachers in our state. Joel is at First Baptist Church of Athens. He'll be delivering the convention sermon, and Buddy will be doing the president's address. The convention sermon is always, in my mind, an important time to hear from one of our own. We never have an outsider that I know of ever in our history who's done a convention sermon. It's always been one of us. And Joel will do that well. As the theme interpretations this year, as you know, because you're working with us on this to a great degree, we'll be able to flesh out what Psalm 100 means, from our history to our present, and what it means to our future. We'll be thinking about what God has done, what God is doing, what God can do in the future. And with those focus points on a celebration, I think Alabama Baptists can feel not a sense of pride in the wrong sense of the word, but a sense of humility, that we can be proud of what God has done, but humbled by our past, and also exhilarated in the opportunities as we look to the future. I think this convention has the possibility of being one of our better ones, in the sense of being able to rejoice together, have this reunion, and yet reflect upon the past and be able to look to the future with an expectation that only God can give.